Well, if you have a Bible, go ahead and turn over to 1 Peter chapter 1. 1 Peter chapter 1. And I will be starting in verse 13, so I'll let you make your way down there, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about my week last week. I work at KMVT, and I'm an advertising sales rep, so I go and I work with a lot of businesses around the area, between Buell, Jerome, and Twin right now in particular. And so I run into new people all the time. Well, there's this new bike shop that opened up. Oh, I think it's out there by Cheney Drive. I think it is, it's like Cycle Fitness or Cycle Therapy. That's what it is. And I was talking to the guys because they've got some cool ideas for some activities that I thought would be fun for our church. Doing some bike riding stuff, things that we've never tried before, but I think would be worth at least a one-time try. And they do some bike rides, and so I was trying to offer our church services to them, saying, hey, we could be your next pit stop next time you come through Buell. We'll maybe, let me know a date. We'll get some water out there for you guys or something, and just give you a nice pit stop on your way out. And they really like the idea, so we're kind of heading that way. Be more of a summertime type activity. Well, they've got this really nice mountain bike. It's got this huge front suspension fork, huge rear suspension travel. I mean, it is a professional, it's about anywhere from a $4,000 to $6,000 mountain bike. Now, I didn't pay that much for my car out there, so I don't know how people can afford that on bikes. But there's this guy who's a professional rider who rides this bike, and I got to meet him just last week. And so there was, while we were talking, a video going on, and these mountain bikers were riding down. They were going down stuff that if you saw it, you just had to look and think, how on earth? I mean, they were going down stuff that you didn't even think a mountain bike could go through, jumping from one spot to another, and staying on the bike, miraculously enough. Doing these jumps, doing backflips, doing full turns, and everything. And so I was talking to the guy, and the guy was like, yeah, I can do that one trick. It was one where you do a jump, and you flip the bike around so it goes around, and then you just get back on the pedals before you hit the ground. And I was like, wow, you can do that. He said, yeah. So you have to really plan it out. Now, if you've seen your typical skateboarder, mountain biker and stuff, you may think on first appearance that they do not look like the brightest bulb in the box, that they're probably just a little bit crazy, and they just do what they do because they're natural at it. Well, not so much. In fact, there's probably a lot more going on up here than we would ever imagine, because what he was telling me is, he said, really, when you're doing any of these crazy stunts, you have to really plan and carefully go through every action so that you can pull off the stunt right, because if you don't plan it through and you just try to do it half-heartedly or you just try going down it, he said all the courage in the world can help you out, and it's good to have guts, but you also need to know what you're doing. You need to prepare and plan out a trick before you do it. Well, I believe as Christians, we should not be living our lives as if we're just going every day as if nothing was happening. There is a war going on every day right here in Buell, as people are faced with whether they will make the right decision or not. People are deciding every day whether or not they should waste their night at the bar, whether or not they should tell the truth or try to hide something that's happened, whether or not it's worth going to work every day. They're making decisions on whether or not they should fight to be part of their family or if they should just walk out and call it quits. Ultimately, this life is the only one any of us have to decide whether we will spend an eternity in heaven or an eternity in hell. It's time for us as Christians to get ready for the challenges in our lives, and we need to be prepared. We don't need to be thrown into battle with no idea of what was going on and what we're doing. We need to be ready to fight now. And I'm going to ask you a question this morning. How are you going to prepare as a Christian? So I want you to look at verse 13 in 1 Peter chapter 1 now with me. Peter says, "Wherefore gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and hope to the end for the grace that is to be brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ." Now I'm going to focus in on that first phrase where he says, "Wherefore gird up the loins of your mind." Now if you know how people dressed back then, especially soldiers, they had more lawn-type robes that went down close to their ankles. You couldn't do much in a robe. I did a Christmas play where we dressed up as old Hebrews. Now I never realized what a robe meant. I went to jump up some stairs because I used to would hop up 2 or 3 at a time when I was in a hurry. And I was in this robe, and I went to jump up, and my foot stopped right there. Did not go any farther, and I just tripped up the stairs. The robe caught my feet. Well, when it came to coming for battle or action, what soldiers or men would do if they needed to take off running or go fighting is they would usually have a waist cinch around their waist. They would take that off and tie their robe up around their knees so that they could move and get going. They would prepare for action. If you were to look at another way to translate it, when it says, wherefore, gird up the loins of your mind, Peter is telling us, prepare for action. And today, I am going to preach about preparing for action and how we're going to do that as Christians. So how do we prepare? How do we get ready for the spiritual battle? Well, the first thing we need to do is we need to prepare by focusing our mind. Our minds determine a lot on what we do from the day. If I was to start telling you to think about fried chicken, and I was telling you to start thinking about, some really good root beer floats, and I was to tell you to start thinking about some nice bread and maybe some homemade mashed potatoes and stuff, you're going to start thinking about food. Your mind's going to gear towards that. Well, in Christian lives, we need to put our minds on certain things so that we will be ready to handle the challenges that we are going to face. One of the first things that we should focus our mind on is the hope that we have in Jesus Christ. We must focus on the hope of Christ. Look at verse 13 again. He says, wherefore, gird up the loins of your mind, be sober, and hope to the end for the grace that is to be brought unto you at the revelation of Jesus Christ. As Christians, there should be nothing that we should really set our hope on except that of what Jesus has given us. If we are saved, if we have trusted Jesus Christ as our Savior, there's really only one thing we have to hope for, and that's to be with Him in heaven. The only thing we have to hope for. But it's so easy in our lives to set our hopes on things that have nothing to do with heavenly things and things that are earthly. There's things in earth that we have to have, but sometimes we depend and hope on these things more than we should. We're going to get a college degree, for example. And I don't mean to pull out anything in particular. There's nothing wrong with the college degree. But sometimes we think that college degree is the hope for our lives. Well, what if it is? What if it isn't? Well, sometimes we set our hopes on getting that better job. We put our application in for this new place and we're thinking, I've got my hopes set on that and I am going to my life is going to be so much better if I get that job. I got my hope. That's the only thing I think about. I set my entire focus on that. Well, if you set your focus on that instead of the Lord, if you don't get that job, first off, you'll be sadly disappointed, and Satan will have you right where he wants you. We can even just get our hope set on a new position. I moved up from an ops position to a sales position. That sales position looked really nice for a young man who was married. But you know what? That is only a means to an end. I need a job to pay my rent and feed my family. But my true hope is set on Jesus Christ and in being in heaven with Him. I need to always remember every day that it's not my job, it's not my position, it's not my education, it's Jesus Christ that gives me a reason to live and the reason to look forward to eternity. So we want to start focusing our mind on Christ every day. Not only focusing our mind on Christ, but we need to focus our minds on being serious. Now in verse 13, Peter says, be sober. Be sober. What does it mean to be sober? Obviously not getting drunk. So you're probably wondering what this little present is that I got. I'm going to be really careful with it right now. I've got $10 million in this present. So who wants this present? Oh, all right. If I handed this $10 million present to you, you would probably tear into it, open it up, and go for it, wouldn't you? You wouldn't even care. That's a lot of money right there. How many of you could use $10 million today? Okay, but I'm going to be a little bit careful with this $10 million. There is a $10 million check in here. But I forgot to tell you something. There's also about 5 bottles of nitroglycerin in here. Okay? Now, if I handed this present to you, you still want that $10 million. But I bet you'd be just a little bit more careful on how hard you opened it. I don't think you would tear into it like you were the first time. Every little action that you did, you would be really careful for. Now, I'm going to have to tell you, there's no nitroglycerin in here, and there's no $10 million. So, I wish. If I had $10 million, I'd be buying us a new building. But, hey, don't have that. But if there was $10 million with nitroglycerin, I bet you would give it a shot. Because you know that if you don't shake nitroglycerin enough, it's not going to go off. So you would just be really careful. You would meticulously open that present, get to the cash, and then get as far away as you possibly could. That's what Peter is saying when he says, be sober. Every little action that you do, you want to be careful to secure the prize without losing both it and yourself. If you shake that present too much, not only do you lose your own life, but you lose the $10 million that's sitting in there. Why do we take our Christian lives any different? It is so serious that we persist and we live for Christ and we keep our faith strong. Every little action counts. And if we do not persist through, and if we are not careful with what we do, we run the risk of losing not only the prize of heaven, but our own souls for eternity. And Peter tells us to be sober, be careful, be calculated. We need to make sure that every action that we do as Christians is the right action, and that's going to draw us closer to God. So we prepare by focusing our mind. By focusing our mind on Christ, by being serious, by being sober in this life. Will we also prepare